What is going on, everyone? Welcome to day 13 of the Halloween Horror. And for day 13, I figured we'd go back to 2003 because I'm going to be reviewing Freddy vs. Jason. So, yeah, Freddy vs. Jason released in 2003. Such a fun movie, but basically, the plot of the film, Freddy does not have his powers anymore to some extent. The people in the town are no longer afraid of him. They've done everything they can to compress their dreams in some way, and it basically, because of this, Freddy can't use his powers and terrorize. So the town has pretty much moved on from him. Well, Freddy doesn't like this and decides to manipulate Jason in order to bring fear back into the Elm Street kids. And that's exactly what he ends up doing. And because of that, it allows Freddy to finally start get his powers back and start, taking out the Elm Street kids one by one. But eventually, Freddy shows his true colors, and then the showdown that everybody has been waiting for. Freddy takes on Jason to see who is dominant between the two. It's such a fun movie. I know this movie, when it came out, was very, very big. I remember when the trailer dropped, I was telling all my friends about this movie, and watching the trailer multiple times. Thankfully, I got the opportunity to go see the movie in theaters. In 2003, I was actually a sophomore in high school, and pretty much everybody I knew was seeing this movie. It was like one of the big movies of that time. And it's interesting because the year before, we actually had gotten a Friday the 13th movie because we had Jason X come out a year before. I believe that was 2002. And then we had Halloween Resurrection come out. And I remember because when I was in school, they had like the school paper, and they were talking about some of the movies that were coming out during that time. And I remember at least Too Fast, Too Furious being one of them, and of course, Halloween Resurrection being the other one. So it's really cool that about a year or so before we would get Freddy vs. Jason, we actually ended up getting two horror films, horror sequels that dealt with two great iconic horror icons. Man, I can't speak. So yeah, the early 2000s was pretty interesting. Over the years, it has definitely grown a cult following. I think at the time when the movie was released, there was mixed reviews. Of course, the internet was very slim at that time. It's not as big as it was now. So most of the reviews were in the paper, or somebody you bumped into, or your own personal opinion would determine whether you liked it or not. But to this day, I mean, we all have our own opinion. But getting reviews and reading reviews before you see the film or after, there wasn't a whole lot. Like I said, a lot of it was in magazines and in the paper. Online was very limited, so you weren't getting a whole lot unless it was somebody you knew or you read it somewhere. So, yeah, a really interesting time to say the least. One thing I do like about this movie is just the atmosphere. It definitely has its moments where you're just like, you can get that eerie and creepy feeling. So I thought that worked really well. One of my minor complaints is some of the characters. I did not care for Jason Ritter's character. I just felt like he should have stepped up a little bit more, at least his character, and it just didn't work. The actor who plays his friend, the character that actor plays, I can't remember his name, but his in the movie, his character's brother is one of Freddy's victims. So he knows a lot about Freddy because after his brother was taken out by Freddy, he did a lot of research and did a lot to hopefully, I guess, avenge his brother in some way. And I wish they would have kept him, and instead of taking him out of the film, being one of Freddy's victims, because I felt like he would play a huge part in the story itself, and having the other characters kind of defeat Freddy and Jason. So I felt like that character was a complete waste. His character was the one that was in the psych ward along with Jason Ritter's character. So that, to me was like the minor complaint of just having, one character not being strong enough and just kind of feeling like he's a waste, while the other one I felt like could have had more depth to him. But that's just my personal opinion. I also felt like that the characters in this movie should have had some tie into the characters throughout the entire franchise. Now, it doesn't have to be, their kids, because let's be honest, we know what happened to the victims. But what they should have done is be some type of relative or have some type of connection to the characters from the first film, kind of similar to like what Final Destination 2 did with their connection to the first film. I felt like they could have done something. I think it would have made the story slightly better and would give the characters more meaning and depth to them. But again, that's just my personal opinion. But all in all, I think for what we got was really good. Maybe they could have held off, and it could have been something a little bit better to this day. If it was released during this time, I think it would have been. I think they would have done more and would have been able to do more compared to like 2003. But at least I'm glad we got it. This was something they teased at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, as you guys know. Um, we see Jason's mask and then Freddy's glove kind of pops out of the ground and grabs it, and then that's pretty much it. So this was something a lot of fans wanted, and we finally got it. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just a fun movie. Robert Englund, I think, is fantastic in this. Was definitely pushing up there in age. I think he's 70 now, so he had to be pushed. I want to say he had to be in his mid 50s or so, maybe in his 50s, give or take. I don't know, but I think he's in his 70s now. It could be in his 80s. I'm not 100% sure, but I know he was already out there in age. So you know, I give him credit for playing this character again. This of course was the last time I believe he would portray the character. Um, so I'm glad we did get a chance to see him one last time, even though I think a lot of us would have prefer a standalone Nightmare on Elm Street, but of course we got the remake instead, which sucks. But it is what it is. But Freddy vs. Jason, I just I have always enjoyed this movie for what it is. I think some of the way that Freddy and Jason takes out some of the victims, I think are very creative. I think whoever was working on the script or working on the effects were really trying to find unique ways for certain things to stand out. Uh, one of them being the bed squeeze at the beginning. You guys will know what I'm talking about. And then there's the character that's kind of like the Jason Mewes parody. And let's be honest, I think at this time, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I think had been out for already a year, because I think that came out in 2001. So I think it was already out on DVD. So I think they got their influence for that character. You know, they got it. They were inspired by Jason Mewes. So yeah, you're gonna get that. Jason Mewes like character, and there's a Jason Mewes like scenario. So I thought that was pretty cool, just like a little nod and Easter egg, I think, in my personal opinion. I think one of the scenes that stands out the most for me that I find to be eerie, just in the story itself, is I want to say it's like the psychiatric institution where they have bodies on these ventilators that are pretty much helping individuals not dream. There's this big thing into the story about how there's this drug that has been given to the Elm Street kids to help them sleep and not be able to dream. They are able to just sleep, and then that's it, wake up. And this allows, this is one of the big reasons why Freddy is powerless. And I like that aspect and that story within with everything that's going on. Um, Definitely gives it that eerie feeling. And of course, when we are at that institution, it definitely has its creepy moments, for sure. Now the cast, I thought was great. There's a pretty good recognizable amount of faces in this, from other things. So if you are a fan of those actors, then you definitely will enjoy this film if you haven't seen it. But there was a few faces I remember when I had first watched the film for the first time. I knew a lot of the faces that I was seeing, like the one actor from The Girl Next Door. He was in the Disney Channel movie Up, Up and Away. I believe he's in Alpha Dog with Anton Yelchin. He's in, I believe, what is that movie, that Star Wars movie that he's in? Fanboys. He's in that. You guys will know exactly who I'm talking about. Um, and of course, there's Jason Ritter. And there's a few other actors and actresses. But yeah, I wish I could say more about this movie. I think the plot is, pretty simple in some way. I do feel like they could have done some things differently, as I've stated before. But all in all, it's a fun movie. I just wish we would have gotten a sequel. You know, I think it would have been cool. But I mean, we kind of did. Excuse me. I think we got a comic book sequel which brought Ash from the Evil Dead franchise into it. So, but I would have liked to see another film or two. You know, excuse me, could have made it a trilogy in some way. I do hope that we will get a crossover film with all the horror icons. I feel like a lot of these characters tie into the other franchises one way or another, and I do feel like they do they take place in the same shared universe. So I'm hoping before a lot of these actors decide to hang up the boots or, really move on, that we get that one final. Well, no, actually, I think all the actors, now that I think about it, have retired. If you want to bring new actors in, that's fine, but just give us a story. I mean, it would make more sense. I mean, technically you could tie in Pinhead to all these other characters because I mean, they all went to hell. They're all using evil to, you know, return in some way and let be like Pinhead be the mastermind of everything. I think that would be cool, but that's just my personal opinion. Um, it would have been nice, I would say, to get cameos from actors and actresses who have been in the franchises for each franchise. That would have been cool. Would have been like a nice little nod to the previous films that came before it. Um, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. I wish it had. Um, but I will say the DVD and I believe the Blu-ray is worth picking up. They do have some really great features, and then I think there's a possibility of a 4K coming through Arrow. Arrow just announced that they're going to be releasing Jason X, Jason Goes to Hell on 4K, and then I think Jason vs. Freddy is the next one. There is that rumor going around that they could be releasing all the other films kind of like backwards. As we know, part 1 and 2 already have 4Ks releases. I'm not sure if any of the other ones do, but yeah, definitely something I might want to pick up down the road, as well as the Nightmare on Elm Street films, because those I believe were announced to get a 4K, so or at least 2 through New Nightmare. So I'm excited. But yeah, wish I could say more about this film. I'm sure by now a lot of you have seen it, and for those who haven't, give it a watch. I think you guys will be entertained in some way. It doesn't connect story-wise to any of the other previous films, other than I would say Jason Goes to Hell. But it's one of those movies you could really watch by itself and not have to watch any of the other films, because a lot of the other films don't really tie in to each other. Some do, some don't. So you really wouldn't be missing out a whole lot if you decided to just watch it separately. But thank you guys for tuning into my review and my thoughts on day 13 for the Halloween Horror 3. Let me know what your thoughts are on Freddy vs. Jason down in the comment section below. Don't forget to give this video a like. It's much appreciated and it keeps me going. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. I do unboxings, movie reviews, collection updates, and so much more. So if those are things you're into, then definitely hit that button. It helps me out. I'm Film Talk with Mikey, and until next time, guys, we'll talk films. You guys have a good one. Take care, and I will see you guys next time.